live in a dangerous world. Issues of national security, the worst pandemic, public health crisis in modern times in America, and we are being challenged as to whether there's going to be a peaceful transition of power in America in the presidency. At that moment in time, we decided none of those topics were important, and what was important was to determine whether or not social media was discriminating against Republicans.
Hello and welcome to What the F*** Just Happened Today, your essential guide to the daily shock and awe in national politics. I'm Joe Amvitas. Let's get to it. It's Tuesday, November 17th, 2020. Welcome to day 1398. The leaders of three major medical associations urged Trump to share, quote, all critical information related to COVID-19 and, quote, with the incoming Biden administration as soon as possible in order to, quote, save countless lives, end quote. The CEOs of the American Hospital Association, the American Medical Association, and the American Nurses Association urged the Trump administration to share, quote, real-time data and information on the supply of therapeutics, testing supplies, personal protective equipment, ventilators, hospital bed capacity, the capacity of the Strategic National Stockpile, the assets from Operation Warp Speed, and plans for dissemination of therapeutics and vaccines so that there is no lapse in our ability to care for patients, end quote. Biden noted that getting a coronavirus vaccine to more than 300 million Americans is a, quote, huge undertaking, end quote, that would be further complicated by a continued delay in the presidential transition. Over the past 14 days, coronavirus cases have increased in all 50 states and in Washington, D.C., the U.S. Virgin Islands, and Guam. There has also been a 100% or more increase in confirmed cases over 14 days in Vermont, Maine, Minnesota, New Hampshire, Iowa, Ohio, Colorado, Michigan, Nebraska, Kansas, Pennsylvania, and New York. The 7-day average of new deaths in the United States, meanwhile, eclipsed the August 2nd peak of 1,150. And more than 73,000 people are currently hospitalized with COVID-19 as of Monday, a new record. Dr. Anthony Fauci called for the nation to adopt a uniform approach to the coronavirus pandemic, rather than the current disjointed state-by-state response. Moving on, the Pennsylvania Supreme Court rejected the Trump campaign's claim that the election observers were improperly denied access to watch ballot counting in Philadelphia. The court noted that state law mandates that observers be permitted to be in the room during ballot counting, but it does not set a minimum distance between them and the counting tables. The 5-2 ruling by the Pennsylvania Supreme Court came as Rudy Giuliani was appearing in federal court on behalf of the Trump campaign, claiming that Republican election observers weren't allowed to get close enough to the vote counting tables in Philadelphia and Allegheny counties. The loss in the Pennsylvania Supreme Court could harm the Trump campaign's related legal effort in federal court to block the state from certifying its election results over the coming weeks. Meanwhile, Lindsey Graham proposed to Georgia's top elections official throwing out legally mailed ballots in an effort to reverse Trump's narrow loss in the state. According to Georgia Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger, Graham questioned him about the state's signature matching law, whether political bias could have prompted poll workers to accept ballots with non-matching signatures, and if Raffensperger had the power to throw out all mail-in ballots in counties found to have higher rates of non-matching signatures. Raffensperger said he took Graham's comments as, quote, an implication of look hard and see how many ballots you could throw out, end quote. Graham denied pressuring Raffensperger to throw away legal ballots, calling the allegation ridiculous. Graham, however, did acknowledge that he also reached out to officials in Arizona and Nevada, states Biden also won, in an attempt to learn how they validate signatures on mail-in ballots. Moving on, Joe Biden told aides that he's concerned investigations into Trump would consume his presidency and divide the nation. Biden did say that he wants his Justice Department to function independently from the White House and said he would leave the decision of whether or not to investigate Trump up to the DOJ. Biden reportedly said he, quote, just wants to move on, end quote, from Trump. Biden also announced his first 9 campaign aides and longtime advisors who will join him in the White House in January, including 5 women and 4 people of color. In a statement, the transition team said Biden was committed to, quote, building an administration that looks like America. Moving on, Trump's acting Secretary of Defense announced that the U.S. military will cut the number of troops it has in Afghanistan in half within the next 2 months, and will cut a smaller number in Iraq. Christopher Miller announced the plan 8 days after he took over for fired Defense Secretary Mark Esper, who had submitted a memo recommending that Afghanistan did not warrant reductions. And finally, Trump asked his top national security aides what options were available for taking action against Iran's main nuclear site in the coming weeks. The meeting occurred a day after international inspectors reported a significant increase in Iran's stockpile of nuclear material. Senior advisors reportedly warned Trump that a strike against Iran's facilities could escalate into a broader conflict in the last weeks of his presidency. Officials left the meeting believing a missile attack inside Iran was off the table. Officials say they left the meeting believing a missile attack inside Iran was off the table. An Iranian government spokesperson warned against an attack, saying, quote, any action against the Iranian nation would certainly face a crushing response, end quote. Biden, meanwhile, promised to rejoin the nuclear deal with Iran as long as Iran also comes back into compliance. That's all for now. You can find the links and sources for all of these stories on the main website. And as always, visit whatthefuckjusthappenedtoday.com for the latest news and headlines. Until next time, I'm Joe Amditas.